So, good afternoon, everybody. So, welcome to this special session, completely new. You never heard about this session, never seen anywhere else yet, because it's the first time we at MySQL talk about this new client, which is the MySQL shell for Visual Studio Code. Sorry for the colors. It seems that Percona brand made pink everything, so it should be red, but no worries. No slide change. Yeah. So who am I first? But I wanted really to have this stuff working, but it's my fault. Hop, voila. Okay. So my name is Frederic Descamps. As you can hear, I'm not a native English speaker, but should be okay. I am known as Le Fred. So if you go on Twitter or any social media, search Le Fred, you will find me. I am a MySQL evangelist. I'm using MySQL for a long time, very long time. That makes me look old. So I'm using MySQL since the version 3.20. I'm a DevOps believer. I like basketball. I'm living in Belgium. Here is the flag of Belgium, so you see that there should be red. And I have a blog called lefred.be where you can find a lot of information, technical or less technical, related to MySQL most of the time, but not only. I also make stuff on Linux there. So why Visual Studio Code? I think it's quite obvious when we see this survey, right? Is that Visual Studio Code is the most popular IDE with the developers for the moment, right? So this tool is very, very popular. And if we want to follow that trend, we needed to be also use this IDE. And this is why the MySQL team, the guys that create the tooling and the client team, propose to have now a plugin, the MySQL shell, inside Visual Studio Code, right? So we wanted to offer a single interface for the developers and also to the operators or the DBAs. And this is where we here make the fusion of MySQL Workbench and MySQL shell together inside of MySQL Studio Code. I'm very sorry for this strange color. So first, how do we install this? And you will see it's very easy, but also secure. And might be the secure part can be tricky, but I will show you how we do that. So the first thing to install it is that we are available in the marketplace of Visual Studio Code. So if you search for MySQL shell, you will find MySQL shell for Visual Studio Code. It's the preview, so GA should be very soon. And but you can already test it, and I encourage you, of course, to test it. And you just click on install, and you will be able to install this extension to MySQL to Visual Studio Code. Or you just also do Ctrl-P in Visual Studio Code and enter this command, x install Oracle MySQL shell for VS Code, and it will install it for you directly in your Visual Studio Code installation. So the list of the requirements to install MySQL shell Visual Studio Code is very short. It's, of course, you need to have Visual Studio Code installed and a recent version, so at least more than 1.63. And you can use Windows 64 or 32-bit or Linux 64 or Mac OS X 10.11 plus, right? And optional, because you can also use an external shell. You can use MySQL shell 8.28, but it is optional because when you install the extension, you will have also MySQL shell, right? So the first thing when the installation is installed, there is a setup wizard that is started to generate a certificate. And this certificate, this is why I was saying it's easy to install but also secure, because this certificate will be are necessary to access the MySQL shell that the extension will run and to secure the connection to there. So this is how it looks like. So it gives you installation of certificate. You just click next, so it generates these certificates. And so on Windows, this is what you get. So security warning, do you want to install the certificate? Yes, and then you are done. On Linux, it could be more, I would say, scared for people, but because it will open a kind of a terminal. So this is how it works. So there's the same thing, install here. And you will have a pop-up to install this. It will say, you will have a terminal telling you want to install it, the certificate, yes or not. But you need to be root, so it will ask you, it will do run as a sudo, and you will have to type the password. So what does it save when you do this? So in the home directory MySQL sh GUI, you will have everything here that has been installed, right? You can see that the extension uses SQLite. It has also the web certificate that we are using and that are generated. They are all in your home directory here, right? And on Windows, this is the path. I was not didn't know how to show the path in Windows, so this is the only way I found it to show it to you. But the certificates are here. So this is what the wizard needs to. You do that one time only. The first time you install the extension, it will need to create and install these certificates to ensure the security between the extension and the instances of the shell that you're going to run. So let's have a look of a few of the features that we have with the extension, right? So this is how MySQL shell looks like in the Visual Studio Code. And let me see here. So yeah, over there, yeah, I will try to point it here. I won't go up and down, but it's almost the same, right? We have here the activity bar icon. You can see it here, right? It's the icon view in the container where the extension is available. So you click there. If you are in edit mode or debug mode, you click here to get what you see here. And it will have all the MySQL shell view available for you. Here is the database editor connection view. So all your database, for example, here you can see that I have a connection to localhost are here. And this is just GUI, right? I'm not maybe the best expert for GUI stuff, as I really like command line. But this is very interesting because this tool will give you the power of command line and GUI at the same time. So here you can see we have all the servers you connect, or if you have heatwave connections, you have they will be also available here. Here is if you have OCI, if you are an OCI user and you have your OCI profile on the machine, you will be able to see all the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure resources available here. So for the OCI user, this is very, very useful. Here are the shell console, so where you want to create a shell console, and I will show you a difference between a SQL Notebook and a shell console in a few moments. But you could have multiple shell console here, so connecting to different shells very easily and jump from one to the other one. And finally here, you can see all the ongoing tasks that you ask to the shell, and maybe he's doing something and he's still running it. For example, if you were to my previous session earlier this morning, you can do a logical dump with the MySQL shell. So, but if you do a logical dump of a big database, it can take time maybe, and you will see it's running, and you can click on it to see what's the status of it whenever you want, and it will run over there. So now it's where it becomes interesting. Here we have this part, depending on what we choose, we have here the SQL Notebook. So this is an embedded editor right, that you have in the MySQL shell for Visual Studio Code, with combine, and this is where it's very strength for the people, for the developers. It will combine all the elements of a classic GUI editor that, to be honest, I'm not mostly using, but all what I would say the Workbench users. There is Workbench is a very popular tool for MySQL, and we have a lot of users using it, are known about that. But also, it will also combine the same benefits of a classic terminal editor. And I will show you, if there are some Workbench users, they will see the difference very easily here. When we are in a, so this was the SQL Notebook, and now we have the console. Shell console here is just exactly what you have in the shell on the terminal when you run MySQL shell, but inside of Visual Studio Code. So exactly the same stuff here. And the thing a bit different, it's that, for example, you can always go here and type something else or modify it without having to retype the full queries, for example. Here you have, oh, it's output, not, so here you have the output, the debug and everything you could have. And it's very important that you know when you take output, it's here, you can choose, you have a specific entry for MySQL shell for VS Code. So that will allow you to find all the debugging information you are needed, or all the output, you can find it here. So if you don't choose that, you will see the general one, but the extension has its own here. So the SQL Notebook that I was saying that is something very, very, very powerful, and that will make the DBAs but also the developers happy, is that is the default one already, and it allows you to make connection to MySQL or even to SQLite if you want to connect to SQLite. Yes, sorry.
Why doesn't it support Python?
Because you didn't let me finish the stuff. I will, I will let you know. I will let you know why. So it supports three language in the SQL Notebook, right? Which are SQL, JavaScript. If you have been like Sveta, use MySQL shell, I guess, because she knows that MySQL shell supports Python. In this case, it doesn't support Python, but it supports TypeScript. Why? Because this is not MySQL shell itself, like an instance of MySQL shell, but what you run here first, it's so the JavaScript or the TypeScript, it's run on the extension itself before sending to the server, for example, which is not exactly the same with Python. So this is more a web interface, right? And Python, there is, even if recently there was a Python for, I've seen a type of a JavaScript, but this is not the case here. So the Visual Studio Code doesn't support Python by default, like as a language. So when you use SQL Notebook, you don't have Python. You have SQL, JavaScript, TypeScript. But if you use the console, then you have Python and not TypeScript anymore, right? So I will show you. Of course, the two protocols are supported. Yes?
Maybe I misunderstood. You said Visual Studio Code doesn't support Python?
To call Python programs inside of it directly. No, it supports the Python language and everything, but it won't, there is no like interpreter of it directly inside of it.
Right,
yes. So this SQL Notebook, right, it will combine the best of the GUI and the command line, right? For example, you can see every time you type a command, I will call it prompt, right? You have a prompt, and the prompt has results. And the results are always linked to the prompt. So every time you have a prompt and you run something, you have a result that it's linked to it. And this block always stays together. And if you modify the prompt, the output, so the result will be modified. And you can go over, it's an endless editor, so you can create multiple prompts or modify the prompt every time you want, and then the output will be there. So if you are a user of Workbench, for example, when you type a query, you have the result at the end. But if you change your query, that result change again, and again and again, and you cannot get it. On a terminal, when you use MySQL client, the old one, or MySQL shell, you do your query, you have the output, you say, this is not what I want, you change your query, you have another output, and you can check the difference, for example, but you cannot modify it again. Here, if you create a new command in the prompt, you can compare the two, everything you want. So this is why you combine the best world of both. It's that you keep like a kind of a historic of all your commands and the result in it, right? So, like I said, the commands can be modified ad infinitum, and you can scroll up and down each stuff. Yeah, something here I wanted to say. If you run multiple commands in the same prompt, you will have tab for each result of each queries you have in the prompt. In the prompt, right? So here, show variables, it's here, and the result of show status is in this tab, right? Of course, we have also editor provides command completion, right? So you can type, and for the commands, for the tables, for the schema, everything, it's here when you use the notebook, right? Because it knows what we are doing, and it connects directly to the database. We have also added some graph capabilities inside of the extension, and this is a work in progress because while I was doing this, the developer was implementing the other graphs, but currently we have the PyGraph method available. So this is the PyGraph method in TypeScript. So you run a query, and you can show the result of the query here as a graph. That can be cool, of course, and we will support like the normal graph, like people are expecting, like the line and the bars and stuff like that. But currently, we have this PyGraph that can also do donut and available. So also, this is something very cool. It's that you can, when you have added the extension, right, you can use MySQL capabilities for your SQL inside other languages. So for example, here I'm testing a Python script, right, and I have a query, right, a normal query, it's a stupid Python script, I would say, and you can see here I'm running it, and I have the result of that. So far, nothing special, but I can select the query, and here I can say execute the embedded SQL with MySQL shell. So these nice dolphins that are, I think it's orange, but here everything is pink, but it's orange. You will see that this is the query that has been selected, and it will run it in the SQL Notebook. So it will create a new block with the query that we just selected and asked. And then you can, of course, run it. You have the result, but you can also modify it. So you modify and say, oh, this is not what I want. I need to order by, or I need to limit something. And you can say, oh, please know that when you are happy with the query, you can say, please update the original file where the SQL comes, and it will modify the original file, so the Python in my case, with this new query that I have modified. So this is quite cool. When you develop, this is very easy stuff. So, and you can see now it has changed the query like I wanted. And you can always run it. This is just normal Python stuff. So this is one of the cool feature we have added with this extension. So this was for the SQL Notebook, where you have the TypeScript, the JavaScript, and the SQL. And with MySQL Shell console, where you open an original shell session, here it supports 3 languages: SQL, JavaScript, and Python. So it depends, Veta, of what you choose. If you choose SQL Notebook or if you choose Shell console, right? Same protocols are always supported, so the classic protocol and the X protocol. So when we use a session, a console, right? Everything now it's available, like the admin API, because when you use a SQL Notebook, you don't have access to the admin API of MySQL Shell. Even if it supports JavaScript, it's JavaScript commands that you can do, but it's not the JavaScript of the MySQL Shell. It's JavaScript inside of Visual Studio Code. Here, it is JavaScript and Python inside Shell, right? Which is different. So with this, in Shell console, you have access, for example, you can deploy sandboxes, because this is a command from the admin API, so DBA dot, from the MySQL Shell itself. So this is the difference. Yes?
It's a question about, like, in the MySQL shell itself, I can create libraries in JavaScript and in Python.
Yeah.
Let's assume I have a library in JavaScript, so in case if I'm running a notebook, it's like extension, I cannot use my library.
Indeed. But I will show how you can use them in the console.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, if you are using OCI, you can also use this MySQL Shell extension for VS Code, and it will be your best companion. To be honest, I'm using OCI, and this is very easy to use, and everything OCI when it's related to MySQL inside of the extension, right? So you have the possibility here to see all your MySQL E2F instances, for example, and other resources, like compute. This is a compute instance, for example. So you see them, right? And you just click one and say, create a connection with the Bastion service, and it will deploy the Bastion service for you if there is none, and you will be able to connect directly over there very easily. Yes?
What is OCI?
What is OCI?
Yeah.
Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It's the cloud of Oracle. So when you do that, because people may know, in OCI, if you use MySQL database service, MySQL E2F, right, the managed service for MySQL, we don't allow you to connect with the public, we don't bind on a public IP. MySQL on a public IP, it's forbidden for security reason, of course. And so if you want to connect to it, you can do it through a Bastion service, for example, and that will allow you you will have like kind of a token, SSH and everything, to that machine for a specific amount of time. And if you want to reconnect, and because you closed everything, you just click on it, and it will redo everything, all the magic for you. You don't have to do it manually by yourself. So when you create a new Bastion, this is how it looks like. It says, oh, there is no Bastion for me to connect. So do you want to do it? Create a new Bastion. You wait a bit, and then the Bastion is here, and you can connect. And as you can see here, I am connected on my MySQL instance that it's running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Something that is also very cool is that it has already some utility that are available in MySQL Shell integrated directly into the extension. And for example, if you want to, you can dump schema to disk. So this is normal, right? It's already very cool to be able to dump with MySQL Shell, because with MySQL Shell utility, you can dump in parallel and load in parallel compared to MySQL dump. So if you are using MySQL dump, please stop and use MySQL Shell for that. But also, you can also prepare the dump you want for MySQL database service in OCI, because there are some requirements to make it over there. For example, there are some restrictions on privileges and stuff like that. All that will be cleaned when you do it. And you can also dump, for example, on object storage. So here, you can also, here it's on, I'm not, here I'm on cloud. You can see the small cloud here. And you can say, okay, now load all my data that I have dumped into the cloud. You just need to do load dump from disk. Very easy to do that, and all your data is there. So you need to select where is the dump. When you have it, it loads it. And you can see here that I was saying earlier, there is a task for loading the data. So loading dump from disk, running, and when it's finished, it says, okay, it's done. You are ready to do it. Okay? Yes?
So the same benefits like Visual Studio Code, where you can connect a MySQL extension, the same thing is possible on the SQL developer.
Extra extension, you mean?
Yeah, the SQL developer.
I will show you.
Oh.
I will answer that. In the SQL notebook, not, but in the console, you can do whatever you want. So now, of course, there are several settings that you can change. For example, when you use tab completion, it will capitalize all the SQL query, keywords, right? The comments, like select, you type SE, then tab. If you should select, it will be capitalized. You can change that and say, no, I don't want to have uppercase keywords. I don't need that, so you can disable it. If you want it, you can enable it. When you run a query, whatever query, let's say you run a query and the query will return 3,000 of rows, then you will have a pager in it. And by default, it's always 1,000 rows max, and you can modify that limit, right? So all that, you have it in the information. So what are the components of this extension, and how does it work? So the MySQL shell for VS Code are multiple components that are interconnected. We have the extension itself that you load, but there is also an embedded MySQL shell. Every time you install the extension, you have an embedded MySQL shell, and you have also a MySQL shell GUI plugin, we call it, right? That will start a web server locally on your machine where the extension is installed, and that has a secure SSL connection, and this is why we had to generate these certificates during the installation. And also, because it contains the MySQL shell embedded, this is why, if you want to download the extension, the extension is, how you call it, as an operating system and an architecture linked to it, right? Usually it's not needed for an extension, but here, if you download the extension for Windows, it won't run on Linux, because the MySQL shell, it's a binary, right? So you need to choose here which one you want to install. When we did earlier with the marketplace, it knows all that, and it installed the right one. But this is why you know that we have some, let's say, operating system linked downloads. So when you start a MySQL shell, every time, if you just install the extension and you start MySQL shell, you start Visual Studio Code, MySQL shell will be running. You can see this is the status. You will have one MySQL shell instance running in the background all the time, right? And then you connect to it using what we just show, right? So, and the notebook connects to that web server, right? Oh, here there is a typo. And for the console, it is always time, when you create a new console, there is always a new shell instance used. Then it's multiple instances that are used every time you create a new console session. And they are a bit different. So like I said, when you start, it starts a web server. Because I'm curious, I wanted to see, oh, what is it on that web server, right? So if you check, because you had, yeah, here not, but on the log, you have the port change. You check, and this is what you get. There is a web server running with a MySQL shell like this that allows you to connect from the web, right? But it's protected with a token that you don't know, and the certificate you can see are here, but you need a token to connect to it. For example, if you run MySQL shell on the console, and you use this new plugin that it's part of a MySQL shell, which the GUI start web server, and I give a port, and I don't give any token, I don't give any certificate, I could run exactly the same stuff expected, no certificate, no token, and then you could connect if you knew a username and a password of this web server to connect to it. But this is what you have. Because I wanted to really connect to it, what I did, I checked a bit what that extension is, and you can create a user. So you create a user, like here, create user Kenny, right, with password Belgium. It's a power user. Then I can list the user, right? And you can connect with that user, and this is what you have. So it looks like exactly what you have in a Visual Studio Code, but on a web server. So this is a bit the magic how it works. So if you want to help that we reach GA much faster, right? You need to test and report bugs, and the extension allows you to directly file a bug report here, and it will fill all the necessary entries that you need. Or you can go here, filling a bug directly on bugsmysql.com and choose the shell VS Code extension. Right? So I encourage you, if you test it and you find bugs, to please submit bugs to us. Now, like the question was, oh, but I like MySQL shell, and I like to extend MySQL shell, and I've created plugins for MySQL shell. Can I use them with Visual Studio Code? The answer is yes. And so how can we do that, right? So the answer is yes. So on Linux, you need to find the appropriate directory where they are, where to put them. You don't put them at the same place than you do it when you are using MySQL shell on let's say on a terminal command line. You need to do it on your home directory, MySQL shell GUI. Usually it's MySQL sh, only here is MySQL sh GUI, plugin data, GUI plugin, shell instance home plugins. In Windows, it is this long path, right? The slides will be available if you really want to use it on Windows. And there you can put everything. So when installed, you can access your plugins, but the plugins are not available in SQL Node, because the SQL Node runs on VS Code, and just after communicate with the shell, when you run in the console, you can directly connect to the shell. So because this is MySQL shell inside VS Code. So here, for example, I have installed my plugins. I create a console, and you see there is much more objects that are part of the plugins I have on my system. And if I want to test it, you can say, for example, one of the plugins I have is called user clone, so to clone a user. And it is an interactive plugin, so it asks me, okay, which user do you want, and so on. And this is also integrated in the MySQL Visual Studio Code with this prompt here on the lower right, where you said, okay, enter the user to search. Right? So I said, okay, I want to search for Fred. Then the destination user, I want to call it Bernard. And then it says, okay. And you can see it runs something to get that Fred, for example. And we can see here the the output of it changed. So it's not yet finished, but we can see that something changed. And he said, oh, I found one user. And then he said, do you want to clone Fred? You say yes or no, yes. And it gets updated every time it continues. And he said, OK, the user, Fred, has been now cloned to Bernard. I copy all the grants. User, it's copied successfully. And so you can use all the extensions you want to create. You can use them in a MySQL shell console in Visual Studio Code. So now I say, OK, let's create a new session. And I will use that Bernard user. And I've created another console here session. Because you can see, you can select the session you want, 1, 2, or 3, it depends what you have. And you are connected here to with the new user, right? So if you are missing some Python modules like this, for example, I want to import pretty table module, you will see, oh, there is an error. Pretty table is not installed on your system. So you can install it on the system, or you can do like this. So you find where the extension is. So the extension is home/fred.vscode extension, the name of the extension you have, shell, bin, MySQL sh, pim, pip install pretty table as a user. It installs it. And then after that, you have the module installed. And you can use all the module you want from Python here, right? So if you are interested in the MySQL shell plugins, you can have, I have written several ones, and they are in GitHub, Fred, MySQL shell plugins. Watch out, sometimes the output might be different because I have, in some of my plugins, are coded output to fake tables or something like that. That will look weird with the shell. It's a work in progress to make them working well there too. To finish, I have also to announce that just today we open the call for paper for MySQL Summit, which is another MySQL big event that will happen in Vegas in October. So if you want to talk there, or if you want to register to come, please do. It will be for people that are used to come to open world. It's completely different, and the MySQL presence will be bigger. Share your love to for MySQL on the social media using #MySQL. If you have questions on Visual Studio Code plugin, we have also a community Slack where there is a room for Visual Studio Code, and you can come here and discuss with the developers, you discuss with me, and also we are very happy to listen to your feedback. So do you have questions on this? So this is a work in progress. So we expect to be GA soon, but we don't stop there. We will, because of this framework that is available for us now, we will extend it, Visual Studio Code, a lot. So expect to see a lot of new features there, a lot of more GUI stuff in it too. Finally, compared to what we had before, our imagination will be the limit, because the framework gives us a lot of more power than, for example, what we are using previously was giving us like Workbench. Sometimes we reach some limits that we won't have with this extension. Okay, so thank you very much. If you don't have any question, or if you want to, yeah, I try to show you everything. I wanted to show you some stuff live, but the network here cannot allow me to do SSH outside, so I could not show you some cloud stuff. Yes?
Do you have a VPN?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there a password written on the whiteboard from the tutorials?
No. There was a... No?
There is like another network. You can join that and you can SSH from there.
Yeah, but yeah, it asked a password, but I didn't get it. But it was just to I was going to show you right what we have here, but like to show stuff like the auto-completion and...
Password is written on the whiteboard in some rooms.
I don't see it. But I can show you with the local one, because we still have some time. Usually I'm always short on time, so it's good. So this is the real extension, right? So you can see, for example, how it works. You have here some database schema. So I have a test one. I want to select tables, T1. And it's exactly what people expect from a GUI editor, I guess, I hope. So we can see here ID, name, indexes. There is only the primary index, foreign keys. I don't have any. Triggers, I have nothing. Views, none. Yeah, I'm an old DBA, I don't like all that. And so this is how it works. And for example, you can here, see you go use, what was the name? Test, I guess, test. Oops. What did he say? I don't know. Error. Classic. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Do I? Yeah, not backslash use. Yes. It's wrong habit. Okay, you see, I'm using it, so I'm here. Then you can edit this, not database, but tables. And you see the completion here. It's already there. And these are my tables. And like I said earlier, show tables, show global variables, show so you see it's three queries there, and the result one here is the result of this table. And it's fun because if you check, it shows me all the time the stuff. And if I change something, it will update it. And here we have, yeah, I think. And you see, for example, it's much more than what we have. You can, no, not this one. I think, yeah. By default, it's 1,000 of entries. So if you have a table with much more records, you will use this pager stuff here, right? So what I want to show you extra. Yeah, I know nothing about TypeScript. But this is TypeScript. I don't know what to do with it because I never use TypeScript in my life. But this is how you move from one to another one. But you can come here again and say, no, I want to be JavaScript. And you should change it. You should. No, it doesn't want me to change it. Why not? Yeah, when you enter something, you see, until I don't finish, it will go forever in the color of the language, like in here, you see. But it seems that it doesn't work when you switch. So you don't see the color, right? But it's orange, blue, and yellow, right? So this is the normal. But if I am in JavaScript here and I want to use the DBA stuff, you see there is nothing. Like I want to show help DBA. He says, yeah, I don't understand this because I am in an SQL notebook. So if I create a shell connection and I do help DBA, this time he knows it because this admin API is available in the shell console, which is not available in the SQL notebook, right? So do you have questions or do you want to see something related to this? So what do you think? Do you think it's a cool stuff or useless, you can say, no worries.
So we recommend that users who want to explore things can use an early PC service that we provide, and you can connect SQL Workbench to it. But essentially, we do get a bunch of hassle from people going like, SQL Workbench isn't working, etc., etc. And if this is a one-click installation to VS Code is basically a one-click installation to your machine, then that sounds much better than Workbench, which we find a bit fiddly to set up.
Yeah,
That sounds like a win.
and this is and it's also, I think, depending on the feedback we get, depending, the developers, because the developers that are doing Workbench and that are doing this one are the same team, and they much prefer developing on this. They said it will be much faster to deploy new cool stuff. So depending on how this tool is received, maybe Workbench will get less love, and this one will get all the love, right? So, which what I expect, because here, also for let's say version about tooling and operating system and architecture, here there is just the shell. Or for the rest, it's exactly the same. If it is Linux, Mac, or Windows, just the shell that we embedded, and that these guys don't even care because it's not the same team doing it. They just need to say, oh, give me a shell from this operating system and this architecture, and that's it. They don't need to think about, oh, but this library is not available in OS 6, or this library is not available in Windows. Here, it all works on the same platform. So for them, it's much easier. So this is why I think, this will be much better than Workbench for that. And also, a lot of people are moving to Visual Studio Code. Before the plugin, to make my presentation, I was already using Visual Studio Code because I think it works fine. Yes?
Is it possible to save connections?
Yes. So all your connections are saved, and there is a place where you can see them. Thank you.
Is this saved in the sense that the configuration is saved and then you
Yeah.
authenticate when you start?
It depends. You don't even know if you store the password in your keyring of your operating system. You don't even need to. The first time he says, "Do you want to store the password?" You can say yes or no. If you store the password, you just click on. On my case, I just click on my laptop, and I'm connected to it, right? And also, like, let's see. You see here, I am my laptop. It's this one with this stuff in it. I will close it. If I open it again, and not this one, so I think I can open. Yeah, when you switch, it was not closed, but when you switch connections, so all your connections are here. So if you create multiple ones, and when you switch from one to another one, the view, you can always come back to where you were, and everything is there. When you close the connection, all the results you have are closed, of course. But if you just switch from connection and come back to the connection without closing it, everything will always be there for you, and so you can come back because all the output and everything, it's also saved by the extension. This is why there are this SQLite database locally to have all this information into it. You're welcome. Anything else? So please test it and send me your feedback, or you send a debug or IDs, feature requests, whatever you want to make this extension even better, right? And so thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.